Hi everyone, I'm John Wright, the Education Director at Media Write Workshops. Welcome. In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to use actions to improve your workflow. In part 1, you'll learn how to create an action. And in part 2, I'll show you how to apply that action to a batch of files. Regardless of which version of Photoshop you are using, you should find this tutorial very helpful. I'm using a PC for this tutorial. When I reference the Control key, Mac users should use the Command key. For the Alt key on the PC, Mac users should use the Option key. And don't forget, this is a video. You can stop and replay anytime if I'm getting ahead of you. In this tutorial, we're going to explore the Actions panel and use the Text tool. Nothing too complicated. So let's get started. What is an action in Photoshop? An action is a series of tasks that you play back on a single file or a batch of files. Those tasks can include many things such as applying a filter, placing text, reducing or increasing a file's dimensions. Almost anything you do in Photoshop can be recorded in an action. Now I'm going to play a couple of examples for you. Here's an example I created to apply skin softening to a portrait. To run this action, I'm going to go up to the Actions panel. I'm going to select the action. Then I'm going to come down to the Play Action button and select it. Click on it. And you'll see on the left that our portrait has gained a soft appearance to it. A little bit more than I would like, so I'm going to select that layer, the top layer in the Layers panel, and then reduce the opacity of that layer down to, about 20%. I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to go to the Layer menu, and I'm going to come down and flatten the image. Discarding the hidden layers, I now have a flattened image. I'm going to run another action on this photograph. I'm going to place a logo in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to select the Place Logo action. Again, click the Play Action button. I now have a logo in the lower right-hand corner. Finally, what I like to do, particularly to images I'm going to send off to my lab, I like to place the file name and a copyright statement in the lower left-hand corner. That's the third action down here. I'm going to select that and run an action on that. And now in the lower left-hand corner, we have the file name and my copyright information. So as you can see, we've done a lot of things to this image in a very short period of time. That's what the big advantage of actions is, that you get a lot done quickly. You'll notice I set up my panels so you can just see actions, layers, and history. This isn't necessary to create an action. I've just set it up this way so it's a little easier for you to see what's going on. Let's take a closer look at the Actions panel. I actually did a screenshot of the interface and cropped out the Actions panel so you could see it a little bit better. So I'm going to just open that file now. And here is a screen capture of the Actions panel. The upper right-hand corner of the Actions panel here, or over here if you actually look at the panel, is the panel menu. We have all kinds of controls over the action, either creating a new action, new setup, duplicate, delete, play, etc. So there's a lot of stuff going on over here that you should become familiar with. An action set is actually a way of organizing your actions. Is kind of a folder that we're going to put your action into. As you can see, the webinar folder I've created here, there's a collection of actions underneath here. We come down here to an actual action I created called the Hospital Volunteer Lunch that we're going to create a little bit later. And underneath that lunch, you're going to see the series of tasks that I created in this action. Down at the bottom here, you see the buttons that are used when you to stop, record, or play an action. On the left over here, there are two columns. The left column is the Include Exclude column, where you can choose to include or exclude a particular task when an action is run. In the column next to it, it's the Modal column. In the modal, if you select a modal to be activated during the playing of an action, when the action gets to that point, you can actually go in and control some of the parameters of the action, and you're going to see an example of that a little bit later. So now we're going to create an action where we put the name of this event and the date of this event onto the image. So let's get started. We do that by going to the Action Panel menu and select New Action. And here we're going to fill in some information. I'm going to call this action the Hospital Volunteer Action. I'm going to put it in the Action Set Webinar. I could pick any of the other ones to put it in if I wanted to, but I'm going to put it in Webinar. If I wanted to, I could assign a function key to this, which is very handy if you have something that you're doing on the fly on a per image basis, but we're not going to add a function key at this point. And then we're going to click Record. And notice in the Action Panel that the Record button has now been activated down here at the bottom. See, it's turned red. And it's about to record everything that I'm going to do to this image. So as I'm working with this image, keep an eye right underneath where it says Hospital Volunteer Action, and you're going to see me starting to add the tasks to this image. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to Text. We're going to pick a font that we're going to work with. We'll use Tree Bucket. We're going to keep it bold. We're going to adjust the size to 30 point. We're going to keep it sharp. We're going to center justify it, and then we're going to choose a color for the font, which in this case is going to be white. And so I'm going to type on there what we'd like to put on here. Now I'm going to commit that type, and I want to put a drop shadow on the type, so I'm going to make sure that that layer is selected. Come down to the bottom of the Layers panel, click the Effects Drop Shadow, and we're going to adjust the drop shadow so it's angling down to the lower right. We're going to make it 100% opacity, and we're good. So now we have a nice drop shadow on our text. So we want to center that text and position it. So I'm going to select both layers and use the Layer Align feature to get everything lined up. So I'm going to come down to Align. I'm going to align the horizontal centers. That gets our type right in the middle. Now I'd like to bring it down to the bottom. Again, go to Align, Bottom Edges. I'm going to bring the bottom edge of the type and the bottom edge of the photo lined up, so it brings it down to the bottom. Now it's a little close to the bottom for my likes, so I'm going to pick just the text layer, use the Move tool, shortcut letter V, and the up arrow to nudge that text up to a position that I like it. So there it is. Notice how everything's recording over here. Look at all these things we've added to the recording over here. Now it's nudged up. I'm going to flatten the image, Layer, Flatten Image. Now I'm going to save the image, File, Save As, put it in this folder here, Save. We're going to use the image quality 10, click OK. It's now saved. See how it says Save over here underneath the action. And then finally we want to close that image. And now we're all done recording, so I'm going to come over here and hit the Stop button. It's now stopped recording. So now we have this whole action recorded. Okay, we're going to just run this action on one of the other photographs from this selection. To run the action, we just go up to the Actions panel, select the action, come down and click the play button at the bottom, and just watch what happens. We are done. Wasn't that fast? Can you imagine how much time action is going to save you? It's just incredible. What if you don't want to save the file? You just want to run an action on something and then do some more work to it after the action's run. There are two solutions. One is to simply not record the save and close steps, as you saw me do earlier, or you can choose not to include those last two steps when you run the action. Take a look at this action. I'm going to uncheck the save and close steps in the include/exclude column. Note that the check next to the name of the action turned red. That's your signal that all the action steps are not included. So if I would close this action, so to speak, you can tell just from looking to the left of the action name that all the action steps have not been checked. So it's always a good idea to check that before you run an action. So now we have the last two steps unchecked, and I'm just going to run the action on it now. And what happens is that you now see the text on the image, but we didn't close the image. You can include or exclude any step in an action using this method. Maybe on one set of pictures you want to type to be white, and on the other set you want it to be yellow. You record both scenarios and then select which you want to exclude or include when you run the action. There are going to be times when you run an action that you're going to want to change some of the parameters when you run it, and you may want to do that on a regular basis every time you run that action. For instance, the action I ran on this lady, remember I went back and changed the transparency of the layer that had the softness effect on it, so I could adjust the softness that I was going to have on her portrait. And that's subjective, so I may want to change that every time I run this particular action. To do that, I'm going to go up to the soften skin action up here, and I'm going to reveal all the steps in there. And if I come down into these steps and I know that this step here where it says set the current layer, that's where the opacity adjustment is for that layer. And I'm going to click in the modal column. I'm going to activate the modal there. So when this action runs, it's going to ask me to set the transparency for that layer. Okay? So let's go ahead and run that action. Here we go. I've got soften selected. I'm going to click the play, running that action. And as soon as it gets to that step in the action, it's going to give me the layer style box. And up here, I can go up and adjust the transparency for that layer. I'm going to put it right on 20. I'm going to click OK, and as soon as I click OK, it's going to continue to run through the action and finish it out. So we've talked about some pretty simple solutions to improving your workflow. Anytime you have a repetitive series of tasks, you should strongly consider using actions to speed things up. Thanks again for watching. My online tutorials are a great way to learn. However, there's a lot of things that I simply don't have time to share with you online. If you want to learn more and enjoy a more hands-on learning experience, check out the classes we offer here at Meteorite Workshops. It's a great way to learn. At Meteorite, we support our students long after the class is over. Check it out.